Traoré and Burkina Faso, as they know that both, whether it's their gold reserves, that is all those proceeds are just in exchange to protect the junta regime.
Now that sounds a lot like jealousy, doesn't it? For decades, the US, France, and ECOWAS kept Burkina Faso dependent, limiting its access to high-grade weapons, controlling what it could buy and from whom. But not anymore. Captain Ibrahim Traoré broke the chain. He expelled the French military, which claimed to defend the Burkinabe's people, but was allegedly shielding insurgent groups behind the scenes to gain access to uncontrolled gold mining in the chaos-stricken regions. He pulled out of ECOWAS, and now he's rewriting the rules, turning gold into guided missiles, and independence into military dominance. After surviving a failed coup on April 16, he flew straight to Russia. Not for diplomacy, but for deadly firepower. And he didn't return empty-handed. From Turkish Bayraktar drones to Serbian Nora B-52 howitzers to Chinese armored vehicles and Russian surveillance systems. The shipments haven't stopped. This isn't a military upgrade. It's a revolution. So let's ask the real questions. What if a small West African nation is quietly building one of the most advanced counter-insurgency arsenals on the continent? What if drones that once reshaped wars in Ukraine and Libya are now flying over the Sahel? What happens when a country no longer begs for protection, but starts buying Bayraktar AKNC drones, TB2s, Chinese MRAPs, Serbian artillery, and Russian electronic warfare gear using nothing but its own gold? Is this about defense or domination? Is Traoré simply defending Burkina Faso, or becoming untouchable? Let's find out. Burkina Faso wasn't always in control of its own security. For years, outside forces called the shots, deciding when and how to offer military support. Meanwhile, armed groups exploited the country's limited firepower, launching attacks with little resistance. It was a vicious cycle. Burkina Faso was always on the defensive, always dependent, and never truly secure. But then came Captain Ibrahim Traoré, and he wasn't interested in playing by the old rules. He didn't waste time making speeches or pleading for foreign intervention. Instead, he focused on one goal, ensuring Burkina Faso could stand on its own. He understood that real security begins with self-reliance. So rather than wait for handouts, he turned to countries willing to supply the firepower his nation urgently needed. Turkey, China, Serbia, Romania, and Russia. But this wasn't just about stockpiling weapons. Traoré had a plan. Every piece of equipment served a purpose. Air power to control the skies, heavy artillery to fortify ground defenses, armored vehicles for mobility, and advanced tracking systems to identify and neutralize threats. This wasn't a random arms deal. It was a complete military overhaul. And today, Burkina Faso isn't just surviving, it's fighting back. But what exactly are the weapons reshaping the nation's defense? War is no longer about numbers. It's about control. Seeing the enemy before they see you. Striking before they can react. Before we continue, know this. In Black Rebellion, we bring you only verified information through local journalists on the ground and authentic online sources. We bring you black untold stories that the Western metric wants to suppress. If we stay silent, the truth stays buried. But together, we can make sure it's never erased again. Like, subscribe, share to black communities. That's why Burkina Faso's most formidable weapon isn't a massive army or rows of tanks. It's something far more lethal. An invisible hunter that never sleeps, never hesitates, and never misses. High above the battlefield, a silent guardian watches. The Bayraktar AKNC. This drone doesn't just gather intelligence. It eliminates threats with surgical precision. Armed with guided missiles and smart bombs, it can obliterate enemy hideouts in seconds, without risking a single pilot's life. Fighter jets demand costly, complex operations. The AKNC is always combat, ready, anytime, anywhere. For years, insurgents believed they could disappear into Burkina Faso's rugged terrain. They thought no national army could track them. They were wrong. The AKNC changed everything. And it's not alone. While the Aka dominates the skies, another lethal predator hunts closer to the ground, the Bayraktar TB2. If the Aka meets Hive is the silent observer, the TB2 is the executioner. Smaller, faster, and built for precision strikes, this drone has already proven its devastation in conflicts across the world. Now, it's Burkina Faso's turn to unleash it. The TB2 is a nightmare for insurgents. It moves without sound, locks onto its target, and delivers fatal blows with pinpoint accuracy. By the time the enemy realizes what's happening, it's already too late. No warning, no escape. Just destruction, together. These two drones have redefined the battlefield. For the first time, Burkina Faso owns the sky. But holding the skies is just the beginning. Burkina Faso isn't just defending its borders. It's making sure no enemy dares to cross them, and that means bringing in serious firepower. When insurgents get too close, they don't face ordinary resistance. They run headfirst into a storm of bullets from one of the most feared weapons on the battlefield. The heavy hitter, the 12.7mm machine gun. This isn't your average gun. It's a war legend. A weapon that has shaped conflicts for decades, from World War II to the deserts of the Middle East, from the jungles of Vietnam to the battlefields of Africa. This beast has shredded enemy lines and flipped the momentum of countless wars. Its power comes from one thing: sheer destruction. Unlike smaller rifles made for close combat, this machine gun fires massive 12.7mm rounds, bullets so powerful they can punch through armored vehicles, rip apart fortifications, and even bring down low-flying aircraft. It's not a weapon designed to stop an enemy. It's built to destroy them. Burkina Faso isn't just using this weapon for defense. It's mounting it on everything: armored vehicles, tactical trucks, watchtowers. These platforms are now mobile fortresses, capable of neutralizing threats before they even get close. For years, insurgents relied on a simple but deadly tactic: speed. Using pickup trucks with mounted guns, they would ambush military bases, hit convoys, then vanish before reinforcements could respond. But that strategy no longer works, because now Burkina Faso has a weapon that kills speed. One well-placed burst from this machine gun can turn a fast-moving truck into a smoking wreck. Its long-range accuracy ensures that even before the enemy knows they're being targeted, it's already too late. But the real power of this weapon isn't just in its brute force, it's in its versatility. It can be deployed anywhere. Soldiers use it in remote outposts to defend against surprise attacks. Convoys rely on it to clear roads and repel ambushes. Military bases mount it on high ground to neutralize incoming threats. Even aircraft aren't safe. In past wars, this machine gun has taken down helicopters and low-flying planes, making it a deadly air defense tool in places where missile systems aren't available. Burkina Faso isn't just adding more weapons. It's rewriting the battlefield playbook. Insurgents who once thrived on mobility now face a force that doesn't just react. It strikes first. No vehicle can get too close. No ambush goes unchallenged. No enemy attack comes without a heavy price. And this is just one piece of the puzzle. Because while firepower is key, protection matters just as much. That's why Burkina Faso has brought in one of the toughest armored vehicles in its history, the WMA 301. Battle tanks are powerful, but they're not built for every terrain. That's where the WMA 301 comes in. This isn't a slow-moving relic. It's a predator designed for the African battlefield: fast, hard-hitting, and built to keep its crew alive against IEDs and enemy fire. Its biggest advantage: a 105mm cannon strapped to the front, turning this vehicle into a highly mobile tank destroyer. This beast of a weapon isn't just for show. It can wipe out enemy hideouts, take down armored convoys, and clear the way for troops on the move. Burkina Faso has positioned these machines exactly where they're needed most: frontline battle zones, where insurgents once held the upper hand. But not every fight happens in the open desert. Some battles are fought in the tight, dangerous streets of cities. Urban warfare is a different beast entirely. Enemies don't charge head-on. They hide in buildings, set up ambushes, and strike when least expected. That's why Burkina Faso needed something small, fast, and nearly indestructible. Enter the VP-11 armored vehicle, built specifically for urban combat. This machine can take a hit and keep moving. Whether it's dodging gunfire or rolling through explosions, the VP-11 gives troops the protection they need to navigate dangerous areas. When insurgents try to block roads or trap soldiers in an ambush, the VP-11 smashes through barricades, plowing straight into enemy-held territory. It's the ultimate counterinsurgency vehicle, empowering soldiers to take the fight directly to the enemy on their own turf. But even with armored protection and powerful vehicles, sometimes the best way to win a battle is by never letting the enemy get close at all. The APR-40 multiple rocket launcher is not just a weapon. It's an unstoppable wave of destruction. In under 20 seconds, this system can launch 40 rockets, obliterating everything in its path. Designed to strike enemy positions from dozens of kilometers away, it ensures enemies can neither hide nor regroup. This kind of artillery isn't just deadly, it's psychological warfare. The moment insurgents hear the roar of incoming rockets, they don't fight back, they run. Burkina Faso now has the power to crush enemy strongholds before they even become a threat. But while ground forces have never been stronger, one major danger still loomed: threats from the sky. For years, Burkina Faso had no way to stop enemy aircraft. If drones, helicopters, or fighter jets entered its airspace, there was nothing that could be done. The battlefield was controlled from above, and there was no defense against it. But everything changed with the arrival of the 9K-32 Strela II, a portable missile system designed to knock enemy aircraft out of the sky. This lightweight, heat-seeking missile launcher can be carried by soldiers, making it nearly impossible for enemies to predict or avoid. The moment an enemy aircraft is detected, it's locked onto and blown apart in seconds. With this weapon, Burkina Faso has shattered the long-standing vulnerability of many African armies' air threats. Now, no drone, helicopter, or jet can enter the country's airspace without risking instant destruction. But as the country strengthens its military, one final piece is needed. Something that ensures every move is backed by intelligence, strategy, and unstoppable force. The handheld game changer, a missile that hunts from the ground. Some weapons are massive, requiring entire bases and runways to operate, but others are small, deadly, and can be carried on a soldier's shoulder. This missile system is exactly that, a portable heat-seeking weapon designed to track and destroy enemy targets from the ground. Enemy aircraft with a single shot. There's no need for high-tech radar stations or massive defense systems. Just a well-trained soldier with a launcher, and once it locks onto its target, there's no escape. Originally used in wars across Vietnam, the Middle East, and Africa, this missile has proven itself time and time again. Helicopters, drones, and low-flying planes that once had free reign over battlefields now face a terrifying new threat. Burkina Faso's skies are no longer open hunting grounds for enemy forces. Any aircraft that enters without permission risks being taken down instantly. But while defending the air is critical, the fight on the ground demands just as much attention. Modern warfare isn't fought with massive tank columns anymore. It's fought with speed, mobility, and superior tactics. Enter the fast attack machine, Burkina Faso's ultimate combat vehicle. Wars in the Sahel don't play out like old-school battles. There are no drawn-out tank duels or slow advances. The enemy moves fast, striking with ambushes and vanishing before a counterattack can land. To fight that kind of war, you need a vehicle that can chase, strike, and keep moving. That's why Burkina Faso has turned to one of the most advanced tactical vehicles ever designed. This 4x4 armored powerhouse isn't like a tank. It's faster, lighter, and designed to dominate every kind of battlefield. Whether rolling through desert sand, pushing through rocky hills, or navigating dense forests, this vehicle doesn't stop. It's built to move. For years, Burkina Faso's enemies have relied on the region's rugged terrain to their advantage, hiding in places where regular military trucks can't go. But this vehicle changes everything. Equipped with high performance off-road tires, reinforced suspension, and a raised chassis, it can charge through mud, sand, and uneven ground without losing speed. No more getting stuck. No more slowing down. The battlefield belongs to the side that moves the fastest, and now Burkina Faso is leading that race. But moving fast isn't enough. You need to survive the fight. Insurgents don't play fair. They don't charge into battle. They set traps. IEDs, roadside bombs, and sudden ambushes are their weapons of choice. Their goal, to cripple convoys before an attack can even begin. This is where Burkina Faso's combat vehicle stands apart. With thick reinforced plating, bulletproof windows, and a V-shaped hull designed to deflect explosions, it doesn't just take hits, it shrugs them off. Bomb blasts that would tear apart other vehicles. This one absorbs the impact, keeping its crew alive and in the fight. That's bad news for insurgents who rely on quick ambushes. The attacks that once worked are now useless. But this machine isn't just about speed and protection. It's also built to strike back. Mounted with an arsenal of heavy weapons, it can be fitted with machine guns to clear out enemy fighters, automatic grenade launchers to break through defenses, and anti-tank missiles to take out enemy armor. This means it's not just moving troops from place to place. It's actively hunting down and eliminating threats along the way. Where is it being used? Everywhere. From border patrol missions to stop insurgents and smugglers, to urban warfare to protect soldiers in city battles, rapid strike operations to hit enemies before they can escape. Burkina Faso isn't relying on slow, moving tanks or traditional war strategies. It's playing smarter, faster, and deadlier with this vehicle in the fight. Enemies who once thought they were safe in remote hideouts now have a new problem. Burkina Faso's forces can reach them anytime, anywhere. No more waiting. No more hiding. No more easy escapes. Now, when Burkina Faso's forces move, they move with purpose. They strike before the enemy even knows what's coming. Special forces ride in armored assault vehicles. Drones scan the battlefield from above. Artillery clears enemy hideouts from miles away. And elite units execute rapid strikes with precision. The nation isn't just defending itself anymore. It's dictating the fight. A powerful military isn't just about having the best guns, the toughest tanks, or the most advanced drones. It's about the soldiers who wield them, the strategists who plan the battles, and the leaders who know exactly how to win. Under Captain Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso hasn't just stocked up on firepower. It has built a new army. This isn't the same force that once struggled to keep up with insurgents. These soldiers have been trained in modern warfare, learning from conflicts across the world. They don't wait for foreign commanders to tell them what to do. They lead their own missions, plan their own strikes, and defend their homeland on their own terms. To reshape its military, Burkina Faso turned to nations that know how to fight. Elite troops have trained with military forces in Turkey and China, learning battle-tested tactics that have crushed insurgencies elsewhere. Now, Burkina Faso's soldiers don't just react to attacks. They prevent them before they even happen. They coordinate drone strikes to eliminate threats before they grow. They use armored assault tactics to take the fight straight to the enemy. They deploy ambushes and counterattacks that keep insurgents constantly on the run. This isn't just about having a stronger defense. It's about making Burkina Faso a military powerhouse in West Africa. Under Traoré's leadership, the country has cut the strings that once held it back. It no longer relies on the West for security. It no longer bows to foreign pressure. It no longer plays by anyone else's rules. With some of the most advanced drones, battle-hardened special forces, armored vehicles built for any terrain, and heavy firepower that can strike from miles away, Burkina Faso isn't just defending itself, it's sending a message. This is a new Burkina Faso. A Burkina Faso that chooses its own future. A Burkina Faso that fights its own battles. A Burkina Faso that wins. It's not Burkina Faso that's afraid. It's the enemy. Do you think Burkina Faso is now one of the safest countries in Africa? Should more leaders take the same approach as Traoré? Let us know your thoughts below.